welcome back to DBD TV, the Dragon Ball Dissection spin-off where I re-examine the Dragon Ball storyline through the changes made in the animated adaptation. If you're looking for my comprehensive review and analysis of the Majin Buu arc, that was covered when I looked at the manga over the past 2 years. Wow, 2 years. Yeah, I don't half-ass anything around here. 29 videos, people! Feel free to either admire me or pity me. Both are equally applicable. But if you're looking for fun, fantastic filler, you're in the right place. Last time we examined the complete rewrite of the Great Saiyaman section of the story. Going into the tournament, animated Dragon Ball largely falls back into its usual routine, adapting the manga almost exactly as it was drawn. The order of some scenes might be shuffled around, but it's more or less the same experience with some new stuff thrown on top. Let's explore it! This is quite a minor thing, but there are so many examples of anime-exclusive scenes that do little more than fill time or throw in a cheap joke, that it stands out to me when they write scenes that actually help connect the dots in the main storyline. At the beginning of the episode where Videl finds out Great Saiyaman's identity, she walks in on her father watching the video from his Budokai win. He mentions that his champion predecessor was some guy who used weird tricks named Son Goku. Obviously, when Videl blackmails Gohan into the tournament, she uses that information to deduce that Gohan is the son of the man with the same surname. It's a completely superfluous scene. The manga flows just as well without it, but it is a good use of time to see how that idea gets into Videl's head. The show also connects the dots when it comes to Chichi's initial distaste of Videl. In the manga, she implies that Videl might be entering the tournament in order to bag Gohan, but like a lot of this area of the story, it's skimmed over way too quickly. The anime actually calls out Chichi's hypocrisy here. Rather than simply getting mad, Videl demands to know what kind of nut would actually do something like that, and Goten innocently answers that that's how their parents got married. Perhaps Toriyama was being smarter, more subtle with this, that you're supposed to take away why this is so front and center in Chichi's mind, without it being forcefully drilled into you? But this is so much cuter. Goten's obliviousness at embarrassing his parent by being way too honest is such a real kid moment. And it's just a better punchline, Videl's sinking horror at realizing what an insane family she's meeting. It feels much more natural that her reaction would be cringe instead of defensiveness. Here's a really big change though as far as I'm concerned. I complained about this when I covered the original, but it seems like such a missed opportunity that Videl learning to fly is glossed over in the manga. I mean, it's very much on brand for this point in the story to say, "Ooh, let's do this cool thing!" Okay, sure, that's fine, whatever, it's over now. Toriyama teases that we're finally going to get an in-depth explanation of ki and flying, but he almost seems embarrassed by it, relegating the characters to distant shots where the reader can't even see what's happening, and then wrapping the whole thing up in about 5 pages. The chapter is more interested in showing Goku's training, only cutting back in after Videl has successfully levitated. Oh, sorry, you guys didn't want to actually see that, did you? Well, let me tell you, I did! Thankfully, the anime has me covered, presenting this sequence with the attention and gravitas and sense of wonder it deserves. I feel like every kid who grew up watching Dragon Ball tried to fire their own Kamehameha, puzzled over how to build up their ki, humiliated their family and friends by grunting and straining in vain. That's the emotion this episode captures. You really feel Videl's struggle here, her inability to apply Gohan's concepts into practice, her stubbornness that refuses to let her back away from this problem until she's brute forced her way through it. There's a hilarious scene that perfectly captures how wrong she and Goten are approaching this. She seems to think if she stands tall enough she'll pull herself off the ground, while Goten believes if he jumps enough it'll just happen. All it takes is one correction from Gohan though, and Goten immediately gets it. Videl has to choke back tears when she sees this. If you've ever been in a class where it seems like everyone gets it but you'll immediately relate to this. She compensates for her shame by being far too mean and pushy to Gohan, but we see enough of her vulnerability to get why she's succumbing to her darker impulses. Good character stuff is what I'm saying. I'll never forget that first little ball of ki she forms, and how it reflects in her mesmerized eyes. Even after years witnessing bigger and more destructive ki attacks, this is the moment that leaves me in awe more than any of them, This one little glowing orb, which, again, we can't even see in the manga. Where is it, Toriyama? Show it to me! Why don't you want me to see this? What else are you hiding? Is Videl holding the Paradise Papers? Is that why you don't want me to see? Likewise, the moment Videl achieves Buku Jutsu isn't handled as, "We now return to your flight training already in progress." It savors the moment. It's been building to this all episode. The music pushes all this drama, the grass begins to waft underneath her as her ki pushes her off the ground. Studio Carpenter are drawing their little hearts out to make it look as good as possible. It's so cool, so tense, and when Gohan's excitement distracts her enough that she lands, you think an atomic bomb is about to go off. In case I haven't made it entirely obvious, I love this so much. Dragon Ball in general needed more scenes like this, scenes that dig into the characters with such care and nuance, but I'm glad the animated version at least has this one. I'm not going to say the TV series always gets it right, though. When Goku shows up to the tournament, the anime adds a cute little emotional moment of Goten jumping into his daddy's arms. Everyone's all happy and overwhelmed, they love each other. In a general sense, I like when the anime makes Goku slightly more affectionate. He can be an oblivious dope while still giving a crap about people. In this case, though, and no one's more surprised to hear me say this than me, Toriyama seems to have a plan of where he's going with these characters. Yeah, his little panel of Goten hiding behind his mother isn't terribly noticeable on its own, but it's part of a larger tapestry. Goten is consistently shown not to completely trust his dad or understand the reverence towards him. He doesn't spend any time with him until he has to. He has to be made to respect him. It's only when Goku has to leave and Goten realizes he'll never see him again that he wants to give him a hug. By having Goten hug him on sight for the obvious heartstring tug, the anime kind of undercuts that journey. Obviously they didn't mean to. The animated version of the Majin Buu arc started on September 8th, 1993, immediately after the gang meet Kaioshin and Kibito. Clearly, they're not going to know where a story is going. And I'm saying that solely to illustrate my point, not at all because I always provide date comparison context when I cover the movies and television show, but somehow completely neglected to do so last time. Thanks, Twigs, you nitpicky busybody. Also, Goku shows up 3 times in the opening, not twice, meaning the main character of Dragon Ball barely edges out random high school classmate. Around the time the heroes get to the tournament, the show becomes quite confused as to what to call them. I already went over this when I covered the animated Frieza arc, but Toriyama's collective name for the characters is the Dragon Team. Starting around the Frieza arc, the animated version began calling them the Z-Warriors, which is stupid and terrible and wrong. And yes, as long as I'm making friends, that applies to the Z-Fighters translation even more so. Imagine my happiness when the narrator actually refers to them as the Dragon Team in episode 208. Funnily enough, though, the episode title itself refers to them as the Z-Team. That is slightly less bad than Z-Warriors. I can begrudgingly accept it as a compromise, even though, as I've said, the whole attachment to the letter Z gives it very little utility. 2 episodes later, they're back to Z-Warriors, and then an episode after that, Dragon Warriors. No, it's called Dragon Quest. We only changed it in America. The tournament brings with it the long-awaited return of a familiar face, the announcer. However, in the animated version at least, you really can't go home again. Utsumi Kenji, who originally voiced him, as well as several other characters throughout Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump, had stepped away from his roles by this point. His replacement, though, is no less of a nostalgia trip. It's Suzuoki Hirotaka, Tenshinhan's performer. That feels like a nice bone to throw him, given his character is basically written out of the story by this point. It's not the specific tie to the past that we were looking for, but it's refreshing nonetheless. Overall, I still prefer Utsumi's version, but Suzuoki playing him a bit more nasally and high-pitched makes him slightly funnier, which fits his role in this arc. In the past, he was something of a straight man, taking everything as seriously as possible despite all the wackiness around him. Here, Suzuoki's portrayal positions him a bit more able to subtly tweak his nose at Mr. Satan shenanigans. They had already more or less auditioned him for the part by casting him as the mushroom-headed Ano Yoichi Budokai announcer a few months earlier. That's certainly not the only connection to that filler arc. The anime as Kaio suggests that Goku's interest in returning to life for the Tenkaichi Budokai is because of his failure to earn Daikaio's training. In fact, when Daikaio hems and haws over Goku doing this, Urunai Baba calls his bluff by suggesting he means to finally train Goku. The Southern Kaio also remembers Goku from that event when he stops by to increase his training weights. I like small things like this. I may not think that storyline was all that great, but I do appreciate the animated version integrating its own world, weaving its material into the main story so it doesn't feel like such an obvious wall between manga content and original animated content. It becomes so integrated that the Ano Yoichi Budokai characters actually get to meet Majin Buu. When Buu kills everyone, Yamcha and Kuririn get to keep their bodies and hang out with Kaio due to their previous involvements in saving the world. I guess the others get a partial bonus for being tangentially affiliated with saving the world? There are a few scenes of Videl, Bluma, and Chichi after they die, and they aren't little spirit clouds, but they aren't full people either. They're little legless ghosts, I guess? Anyway, Yamcha's no stranger to hanging out with Kaio. He's also no stranger to filler letting him kick butt as long as he's already dead. And that's how we get the infamous sequence of Yamcha beating up Olivu. Oh, and all the fans freak out while I just laugh because I enjoy it so much. However, all is not well. After Buu blows up the Earth and the heroes escape to the Kaioshin realm, Buu doesn't just immediately follow. He searches for them, jumping from planet to planet and destroying each one in turn. I guess those guys never come back to life. Eventually he goes to the Daikaio's planet, and Kuririn and Yamcha aren't able to warn Paikuhan and the others not to antagonize the little guy. Whoops. Well, teasing Majin Buu might actually make Paikuhan interesting, and we can't have that. So it's interrupted pretty quickly. Instead of Goku and Vegeta being caught off guard when Buu finds them, they actually lure Buu to the Kaioshin realm by raising their ki so that their friends won't be killed. After all, as they say, if they die again, they're gone forever. Interestingly, this is yet another example of something I always enjoy pointing out. The animated version preempting information that is introduced later in manga material. I went on at length when I covered this before about the Buu arc having to establish this concept in order to maintain the drama of dead people fighting. It's what Goku reveals to Vegeta right before the dead Vegeta starts fighting Majin Buu. As awkward as I still feel that is, I prefer the way the manga handles it, situating it right as it becomes dramatically relevant. Placing it here in order to give their relatively unimportant scene dramatic tension renders it a bit less impactful. It's not a huge thing, it doesn't ruin it, I just think it's better in the manga. It is funny though, because up until that point, the anime keeps chugging along with its interpretation that the dead are impervious. When Goku goes missing after his fight with Vegeta, Dende has to talk down a worried Kuririn by reminding him that it's not as if the deceased Son Goku can die again. Even as late as 7 episodes before the anime attaches the die a second time rule to Yamcha and Kuririn, the dead Bluma assures Dabra that he can't die again. Yeah, that's right, Dabra's here too. In another funny little bit taking advantage of manga material, Dabra's in heaven. Remember that Enma tells Goku that hell is too much like the demon realm, so he sends the dead Dabra to heaven instead. The implication seems to be that he's intended to be miserable there, but the animated version decides his personality is completely overwritten, so that he's now this bright-eyed, flower-crowned star child who just wants to be as helpful as possible. And he's hanging out with a bunch of people he doesn't even know. It's really cute, if ultimately pointless. But I was talking about the tournament, wasn't I? Let's get back to that. Jeez, this is a long story arc. 29 videos, remember? I mentioned when I covered the original that when it comes to the Videl vs Spopovitch fight, the anime both sanitizes it and makes it more brutal. For example, in the anime, Videl doesn't have her teeth knocked out, but it does go on for quite a bit longer. Videl breaking Spopovitch's neck is treated by the audience as much more horrifying. The announcer even disqualifies Videl when he thinks she's killed her opponent. Spopovitch stops Videl from falling out of bounds. The TV version adds a police fan club for Videl due to how they work together in Satan City. They play in a band for her, they have her name on a sign. They're doing the best they can with the sign. A lot of people have Videl signs, and hey, at least these guys understand there's a long E sound in her name. Anyway, the police are devastated when Videl is so horrifically brutalized. That's their job, after all. To piggyback off of that, ever since I covered the Videl Spopovitch situation, I have received countless comments from people claiming there is depth to this fight, motivation for Spopovitch. He is exacting revenge against Mr. Satan due to Mr. Satan humiliating him at the last tournament. Yeah, there's a reason I didn't talk about that in my previous video. That doesn't happen. There is no connection between Spopovitch and Mr. Satan in the manga. All we know about him is he lost in the first round. The animated version adds a flashback of the 24th Budokai where Mr. Satan defeats him. It's pretty cool to see their interpretation of this unseen event. They have stadium lighting, which is never seen in any other tournament. Pretty cool. And you might be thinking I'd say it's likewise pretty cool to add this bit of history so that Spopovitch is not some mindless monster, but that his own grudges are seeping through, similar to how Vegeta is eventually used. The thing is, though, I don't think it really adds anything to the fight, nor do I think it's meant to. It's not even divulged until after Videl's fight is over, and it's not presented as some kind of revelation that in turn motivates the other characters. There's nothing to imply Spopovitch even cares about this. It's just Mr. Satan confused as to how someone he beat so easily could in turn so easily overpower his daughter. In terms of a motivation, it's flaccid, it's pointless, it's exposition that's past its sell date. Who even cares now? It's over. The information isn't added to the color commentary the announcer uses to introduce him when it so easily could have. Just like in the manga, he still only says that Spopovitch was defeated in the first round, but doesn't specify by whom. You'd think being beaten by the champ would be worth mentioning, but no. And that's probably because it hadn't been invented yet. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic idea, and I'm glad fans are connecting the dots. But I argue it's another case of the fans taking established bullet point facts and doing the actual storytelling for them, because the series itself doesn't do a good job of tying those elements together. And that's assuming it even occurred to them. An addition to that fight I find far cleverer and far more willing to assume was intentional is this. During Videl's fight, there's a cutaway to Mr. Satan. He's been preening for the past few episodes, ever since he found out his opponent is a cute woman. In this scene, he is practicing in the mirror, trying to formulate the best way to defeat number 18 without being so violent that it upsets the crowd and damages his image. It is so incredibly sexist and patronizing, and is a fantastically uncomfortable juxtaposition to his daughter, who at that very moment is being beaten in front of a horrified crowd by a guy who isn't at all interested in PR. That's some really good morally gray writing right there. Comparing it to that other scene, the lesson here is, timing is everything. Finally, I'd be remiss not to talk about the Cell Games movie. It deserves a chef's kiss. Mwah. Before the junior division gets underway, a huge blimp floats into the stadium, presenting a dramatic recreation of Mr. Satan defeating Cell. It's amazing. What do I even say about it? From the fake heads to the obvious wire work to Cell's use of button-activated traps to push Mr. Satan's narrative about tricks, to all of the characters' embarrassed reactions, it is a gem of a sequence. The Studio Live folks even credit themselves at the end. It's all kinds of fun, and I have to say, the dub actually does it better. There. Does that make up for me thinking Z Fighters sounds like it was conceived by a sugar-addled 5-year-old? This is one of only a few bits of the Boo arc I've ever seen dubbed, but they managed to top what was already brilliant and beautiful. Here's where my compliment becomes a bit backhanded. Presenting everything as corny and over the top was kind of Funimation's bread and butter back then, so it makes sense they'd do well with this. As for a certain future dub of this particular scene, all I can say is, justice for Team 4-Star. If you know, you know. So here we are, 2 down, who knows how many to go, as the road to GT continues. No crazy puns this time. I just want to thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Consider supporting the channel on Patreon if you can. The road to GT is kind of a precarious one for me. Somehow it seems like there are still people who don't know that Dragon Ball Dissection is continuing for the foreseeable future. I really don't need to be out of a viable job before I've even reached my metaphorical interstate exit on this road. So thanks for all you do. Please don't go anywhere. Just stay right there.